Why is it that in a sea of travelers rushing through airport security, businessmen juggling laptops, families herding kids, solo wanderers with backpacks, you sometimes hear those unnerving words directed at a perfectly ordinary passenger? "Excuse me, please step aside for a random search?" At first glance, it feels like a lottery, like the flip of a coin or the draw of a card. But the deeper you dig, the more unsettling it becomes to realize that these selections are rarely as random as we're led to believe. Imagine this: you've done everything right, checked your bags, printed your boarding pass, breezed through check-in with a smile, and yet suddenly you're singled out. Why you? The truth is that airports around the world operate on layers of hidden systems, algorithms buried deep in travel databases, subtle behavioral cues analyzed by security officers, and even occasional secret tests of staff compliance that together create a process far more calculated than the word random suggests. Think about your itinerary. A one-way ticket with no return flight can quietly flag you as suspicious, especially if it was purchased last minute or with cash instead of a credit card. Did you know that security databases cross-reference your travel patterns against historical smuggling routes and unusual passenger behaviors? You might think your layover in a lesser-known hub is nothing more than an affordable connection, but to the system, it might echo the same path used by couriers in the past, quietly nudging your profile closer to the search category. And then there's body language, something most travelers never even think about. Security personnel are trained to notice micro-expressions, the way someone fidgets with their jacket, glances back nervously at a gate agent, avoids eye contact altogether, or suddenly stiffens up when asked a casual question. You could be entirely innocent, yet the human brain is wired to leak nervous energy in stressful environments, and airports are masters at detecting it. But here's the part that takes the mystery deeper. Sometimes you're not flagged because of you at all, but because airports themselves conduct secret audits. Random passengers are deliberately marked for secondary screening, not for suspicion, but to test whether officers follow procedure correctly. In those cases, you're essentially a pawn in a hidden rehearsal designed to keep the system sharp. And then there's the factor no one talks about: behavioral mismatches. Imagine you're dressed like a casual backpacker but booked a first-class ticket, or you're carrying only a tiny day pack for an international trip that spans weeks. Those contradictions raise silent questions in the minds of trained officers, questions that could earn you a random inspection. Even something as tiny as traveling too often to the same destination, say a series of trips to a country associated with high-value contraband, could quietly build a pattern that algorithms don't ignore. What makes it even more intriguing is how airports balance psychology with technology. On one hand, there are watch lists and hidden databases tracking suspicious bookings, but on the other hand, they deliberately insert a degree of true randomness to avoid creating patterns criminals could exploit. That means that while many random checks are rooted in hidden logic, some genuinely are luck of the draw, making it impossible for anyone to predict with certainty why they were chosen. And yet, passengers who've been pulled aside often replay the experience in their minds, searching for clues. Did I say something strange? Did my bag look bulky? Was it my nervous smile? In reality, it could be all of those or none of them, because the design is meant to keep travelers guessing. The real brilliance and eeriness of the system is how it keeps people in the dark. The illusion of randomness protects the actual criteria. And that secrecy is what makes the process work. If everyone knew exactly what triggered a search, Manipulation would be easy, so airports mask the truth with the comforting explanation of random selection. But peel back the layers and you discover something fascinating. There are invisible audits happening all the time. Officers might receive a silent cue from their supervisor to search a passenger who poses no threat, simply to ensure they follow every step of protocol. Sometimes that passenger is you. Other times, officers are subtly observing passenger behavior in line, who looks anxious, who avoids interaction, who tries to blend in too much, and when one of those cues aligns with an algorithmic red flag, you've essentially lost the randomness lottery without ever knowing it. And here's another little-known truth. Airports operate differently depending on global risk levels. During times of heightened security alerts, say after a major international incident, the pool of random checks suddenly expands, meaning far more people are pulled aside, even though the system still labels it as random to avoid alarming the public. For frequent flyers, this can feel like déjà vu. Why am I always the one? But the deeper reality is that frequent travelers often trigger consistency checks, because statistically, those who fly often are also more likely to slip something through unnoticed, making you a prime candidate for repeated screenings. On top of that, cultural cues can play a role in ways most people don't realize. The way you respond to authority, too polite, too aggressive, or too dismissive, can unconsciously influence whether a screener decides to escalate the encounter. And while no official will admit it, human intuition plays a surprisingly large role. Officers often rely on a gut feeling honed by years of watching thousands of passengers stream through checkpoints. They may not even be able to articulate why someone seems off, but that instinct, when combined with a system built on data, creates a hybrid process that is far from random. But perhaps the most shocking element is this. Sometimes airports don't just test their officers, they test passengers. Certain airports have been known to plant harmless anomalies, like unusual items in a traveler's bag, without telling them, just to see how screeners react. If that happens in line ahead of you, the system may spiral into additional checks that sweep up innocent people nearby. So when you think about it, the idea of randomness is more of a cover story than an explanation. Behind the scenes, it's a symphony of hidden algorithms, subtle human judgment, psychological strategies, and secret audits all working together to create an experience that feels unpredictable, but is in fact carefully engineered. And yet, despite all of this, the mystery remains unsolved for travelers, because no matter how much you analyze your own behavior, the reality is you'll never truly know whether you were flagged by a database, by a behavioral cue, by a supervisor's test order, or by genuine chance. That uncertainty is deliberate. It keeps passengers cautious, alert, and compliant, because the unpredictability itself is a form of control. So the next time you hear someone being told, "Step aside for a random search," remember that what looks like luck may actually be the tip of an invisible system, one designed to keep you guessing, one that thrives on secrecy, and one that ensures that even the most ordinary traveler could suddenly find themselves under the spotlight. And that's the part that unsettles people the most. The realization that in airports, randomness is rarely random. It's a carefully crafted mystery that keeps us all watching our backs, wondering if we'll be the next chosen one.